Hi, good morning, and welcome to the ZP Developer Zone. So every Sunday at 8 a.m. London time, we like to do a podcast and vlog for our news for this week. And this is what I'm essentially doing now. So let me jump straight into it. So at ZP, as I say, we like to put out sort of news and technical information during the week, and then we like to do a sort of summary of the week, um, which is this podcast. Now, one of the things that we've done this week is the ZP team has put together a really nice video actually introducing one of our newest sensors, which is a glycerol sensor. So glycerol is kind of an unusual molecule because when you look at, if you're a chemist, you look at molecules, they have a lot of functionality. And glycerol doesn't have a lot of functionality. It has what we call OH groups or alcohol groups. But unlike other molecules which have aromatic rings and nitrogens and amines and carboxylic acids. They have all these different functionalities on them. Whereas glycerol, in the world of chemistry, could actually almost be quite boring. But that said, we've developed a glycerol sensor. It can be very specific because it's actually enzyme based, or it is rather specific because it's enzyme based. And in order to help a collaborator adopt this sensor, we've put together a video about it. And what's nice about this video actually is when you watch the video, you'll see that the video is very high quality, and that's because at ZP, we really like video in order to explain things to people and demonstrate things. And so the video is good quality, and we've really started to invest now in a proper studio, etc., for actually doing video. So if you watch this, you see lots of camera angles, there's lots of overlays and inserts of different videos, and it's quite a clear, let's say, video about what we're actually doing. So thank you to the ZP team for developing the glycerol sensor. And then we also understand that it's not enough just to make great technology. You have to be explain to people how to use that technology. And so that video is a great training resource. So thank you to the team for doing that. Some other news from Zimmer Peacock for this week is we're talking at a conference. So on the 8th to 11th of November, there's a conference. It's an online conference called Sensors in Medicine. And ZP will be speaking at that. And so we're delighted to be invited to speak at the conference, and we'll be speaking and really talking around the measurements of analytes such as lactate in the sweat, probably during, well, not probably, during physical exercise. So we're happy to be there. It really goes along with, at Zimmer and Peacock, there's a sort of, we have a whole host of sensors for sweat analysis. We have our CGMs, our continuous glucose monitoring, which is really quite useful for measuring the fuel in the body. We have lactate, which can kind of is a good indicator of your sort of anaerobic respirations and your stress state. Conductivity, this really plays into trying to determine your hydration levels. And then we have some really important ones that are sort of a testosterone and cortisol as well, and understanding what an athlete's testosterone and cortisol levels can be really useful for kind of understanding performance. Um, so we're talking at the Sensors in Medicine conference, and it's really in line with our interest in sensors. We do a lot of sensors for health. We do a lot of sensors for agri-tech these days. We do a lot of sensors for aquatech, and now it's interesting to also explore the medical, not medical, rather the sports applications of these sensors as well. Now, this week we did a webinar, and it was quite a lengthy webinar, but something that we really touched upon, and the webinar also came from Germany this week. I'll touch upon that in a minute. But we did a webinar this week, and it was had many aspects. But one of the things we did talk about was actually a glossary of terms. So at Zimmer and Peacock, we do actually have a web page which talks about things like the settling time of a biosensor, the analytical range of a biosensor, the limit of detection, the limit of quantification, response time, signal resolution, offset, clinical range. This is a very long list. Signal drift, error grid analysis, biosensors, specificities versus selectivity, and that is a complicated one. A number of times people get that mixed up. I'm not quite sure what that means. Something called the confusion matrix, which I think is a really powerful tool. It's so simple to actually do, but the value you can get out of it is really good. And then we did touch upon the receiver operator characteristic, where you can have a threshold and you can actually change what you call the area under your rock curve deliberately. Now, if these terms are not known to you, then it's probably worth trying to go back and catch up on that video, because there was an awful lot of information in there. And we did also put a lot of sort of animation as well in terms of trying to explain, what we mean by these different terms. And so I think in biosensing, people often approach companies like Zimmer Peacock and say, I want a sensor with this much accuracy. And that's really an interesting question, because accuracy is fine, but you've got to give some context to what you mean by that. And they often mean, in the context of my sensor, sorry, my particular application. And of course, we may never have done that particular application. I mean, an obvious one would be like, I want to accurately measure the fructose in pomegranates. Well, that's a distinct piece of work in itself. If you're going to measure the fructose in pomegranates, then you have to get yourself a fructose sensor, which we do have. You have to get yourself electronics, which we do have. But then you have to kind of calibrate yourself, to understand what's my calibration factors in pomegranates fruit. So, for example, just saying that people often come to us with these kind of statements about accuracy, precision, etc. But actually, repeatability is a good one as well. And therefore, I think that video this week should be pretty useful. We also touched upon nanopores. Nanopores is not something we talk about an awful lot at ZP, but nanopore is definitely an up and coming technologies sector. It's really good for what they call next generation sequencing. I mean, I mentioned it in the video this week, but the biggest not biggest, but one of the most well-funded companies in this space is a company called Oxford Nanopore, and they, I respect what they've done. They've been doing this approximately, well, I would say about 10 years now, and they've been successful. The founder Gordon Sanghera really stuck at it, and they've been successful. So good to them. And the last thing we talked about in the ZP webinar this week was actually pH to API. I've said this so many times, but what's the most measured chemical parameter in the world? It is pH. I could also say probably, but it is pH. And we've talked about sending pH data to the cloud. So pH to API is something that we've talked about. Now we have our developer zone every Thursday at 8 a.m. and we do a webinar for it. And in there we talk about that we do workshops. And of course, during COVID-19, we've been a little bit short on workshops. We've only been able to do things that are online. But we've definitely recently changed that. And so we are doing a workshop on CGM in Norway on the 14th and 15th of September 2022. So let's say at least that'll be fun. And then we're also doing another workshop in October in India. And we've actually got a couple of, let's say, locations sorted out. I think it's IIT Bombay, and we're also going to SSN. And there's a couple of us going, let's say, and this will be, the dates are approximately the sort of around the 10th and 11th, and then the 13th and 14th. So just essentially a day between them so we can travel. So ZP will be doing some workshops, and these will be in India. And we do have some flyers online about that. And, it's part of our kind of workshop series. Sort of, at least bring what we know to the wider community. So we're happy to be, let's say, doing that. And some other work that we'll be doing this week is we've also been doing. Let me just. We've also been to Germany this week. So what's happened is there was a big conference this week called ACMA, and ACMA is a conference that's essentially sort of held in Germany, and we were delighted to attend it. And ACMA is really a big process conference, so we attended that. We kind of went around their show, let's say, spoke to all the sort of engineers, and then the process industry is clearly is one of the biggest industries in the world, and the process industry is a very generic term there, but process industry can mean things like the fine chemical industry, it can mean the water treatment industry, it can mean the pharmaceutical industry. It's generally people who are converting or materials from one state or to another state. um, and so we walked that conference, and it was really enlightening because there's a big change in going on at the moment in the world, and that is Industry 4.0. Now, Industry 4.0 kind of says that we've been through three industrial revolutions. Um, the sort of three industrial revolutions were there was the first transfer of, let's say, labor from being just manual labor to using things like water and steam. Then there was a second industrial revolution where electricity basically came into the kind of factories. Now there was a third revolution when electronics and computing came into production. And now we're in a fourth industrial revolution where actually machines and computers within the production are speaking to one another now. So they're kind of connecting, and so that the fourth industrial revolution is really a derivative of having the internet, and it's also part of the sort of Internet of Things, that things have become smart and connected to the internet. And once you're doing that, then you can start having um, machines and processes within the production actually speaking to one another. So it was very interesting to go to ACMA this week and really see that there is definitely a shift to Industry 4.0. I think it's been going on for close to a decade now, but with everything in life, it actually takes a while for it to kind of gain some sort of momentum. I think one of the best examples of a company that runs itself on Industry 4.0 principles is actually Amazon. And in part because they were probably aware of Industry 4.0, but I would even dare to say maybe they were part of inventing Industry 4.0. And Zimmer Peacock is also part of Industry 4.0, because when you look at Industry 4.0, there's all this, there are sensors in the mix, there is connectivity, there's machines, but there's very little chemical and biological and biochemical measuring. And that's really where Zimmer and Peacock can come in. So we went to ACMA this week. Now, the last thing I want to talk about this week is a conference that's happening at Swansea University. This conference is happening on the 12th to the 14th of September, and it's really around integrated pest management. So at Zimmer and Peacock, we are very interested in really agriculture and aquaculture. And when you look at agriculture and aquaculture, there's actually a lot of, unfortunately, pests is probably a big influencer on yield. Essentially can affect the crops. I mean, the most classic one would be like locusts, unfortunately, in parts of Africa where they eat the crop. So pest management is important, and so Zimmer and Peacock will be attending. We'll be wearing our biosensor hat, of course, when we go, but we will be attending the IPM at Swansea University on the 12th to the 14th of September. So if I was to summarize this week then, so we've been making videos around our glycerol sensor, so thank you to the ZP team for that. We'll be speaking at Sensors in Medicine on wearable sensors and probably more focused on lactate sensing for sports. And we did do our ZP Developer Zone this Thursday. If you have any questions that are technical in nature, you just shoot them over to Zimmer and Peacock and we'll answer them then in that webinar, as we do every week. We're also, as part of our sort of ZP Developer Zone, we also have our workshops, and we're going to be doing one in India. But before that, we're actually doing one in Norway. And then finally, this week we've touched upon health, industry 4.0. And then I mentioned agriculture and aquaculture, and then almost under agriculture and aquaculture, we also have pest management, and that's why we'll also be talking at Swansea University on pest management. So you can see you can always see there's a definite theme in this. Many of these things are really applications of the same sensing principles. Um, so I will sort of wrap it up and say thank you very much there. If you have any questions of ZP, reach out to us. If they're technical, we'll cover them in the ZP Developer Zone webinar. Otherwise, I thank you for listening this week, and otherwise have a good week, and speak to some of you on Thursday at the ZP Developer Zone, and some of you on Sunday when we do